The Chinese are now entering into the final days of preparation for the 18th Party Congress. The progress toward this Congress had been seemingly kind of fast early in the year. They held a few events that are normal precursors to the conference a little earlier than normal, and that suggested they were trying to get past the scandal over the fallen leader, Bo Xilai, as fast as possible and try to convey to the people an image of normality. But during the summer, that all slowed down, which suggests that they're having trouble with horse trading over positions. 70% of the leadership is going to change in this one. So from the last meeting to the next meeting, a lot of seats are going to be switched. 70% of the Politburo, 70% of the military commission, 70% of the Politburo Standing Committee, and on down through the system. This is like a major change of party leadership in our system, where the Democrats come out and the Republicans come in, or vice versa, in terms of the scale of what this means for change in China. And so a lot of people in and out of government are holding their breath to see what the consequences will be of such a massive shift of personnel. Well, I think there's a lot of jostling going on, and whether this is, backroom knife fights or just backroom refusals to concur and agree, we don't know. The Chinese system is too opaque. Someday we may find out what happened in the current period, but we don't see it now. They obviously have had some unusual behavior. The heir apparent, Xi Jinping, disappeared for almost 2 weeks, and no accounting was made of this publicly. That's an anomaly in a world of wired populations, and it shows the Chinese system has still got hallmarks of the old Leninist traditions and certain Chinese traditional conspiracy and secrecy in the politics of how they govern the place. One of the great changes in modern China was from the dictatorship period of Mao Zedong through the leadership of Deng Xiaoping to a more institutionalized and stable succession mechanism. And they've made a lot of progress in that direction, but it's not complete. And we're seeing that now. And one of the things that's happened in this process is they've accentuated the role of interest groups. People with an interest in certain kinds of industries or certain kinds of public institutions, and party, the army, public security. They have their own institutional interests, and they jostle with each other to get representation in the top body of the party policy-making organs, and that's the Politburo Standing Committee. One of the things that was decided fairly early this year was that would be reduced from 9 members, which are 9 members, each of whom can veto a consensus among the others, to 7, which might be a little bit more efficient for decision-making. But it means 2 interest groups are going to be dropped out. A lot of people want to know what the new leadership is like in China. They want to know what is Xi Jinping like. And the fact is we don't know a whole lot about him. Fortunately, we've had some experience. We had an exchange with our vice presidents. He came to the U.S. He'd been here before. He's got a daughter at Harvard under a pseudonym. So they're much more knowledgeable about the U.S. And I think the leadership as a whole is far more familiar with foreign affairs and with the United States than previous leaderships have been. So there's some reasonable prospect that we can deal with a leadership, a country that will have a more realistic set of expectations for what we can and cannot do than would normally be the case in our modern experience with China. And that's a source of some modest optimism to me. When Deng Xiaoping stepped down from the party leadership, he didn't really lead the party, but when he brought in Jiang Zemin in 1989 to take over after the Tiananmen affair, he held on to the Military Affairs Commission. At the time, that was assumed to be because Jiang Zemin had no military experience and Deng had a lot. So Deng would keep the army loyal and under control for Jiang Zemin. Then when Jiang stepped down 10 years later, well, 12 years later, and Hu Jintao came in, Jiang did that to Hu Jintao. He said, well, Hu Jintao's a party guy, he doesn't have military experience. I'll stay here at the Military Commission as chairman for another 2 years. And that kind of diminished the consolidation of power for Hu Jintao as he took over as the new #1. And now they're talking about doing it again. This time Xi Jinping has a credible claim on military experience. One of his earlier jobs was at the military commission and with Geng Biao, who was a very important military leader when he first started working in government. And so Xi can say, I don't need it. There is some speculation that the current dramatic interplay with Japan over the Senkaku Diaoyudao Islands is something to do with creating a crisis atmosphere that will allow Hu Jintao to say, I can't let go now, too many important things are happening, Xi Jinping isn't ready. We don't know that that's the case, but that's being speculated in the various circles surrounding China, trying to observe what's going on. We won't know, and my own bet is probably Xi Jinping will take over the full military commission, because it is, even though it's happened a couple of times, it is anomalous not to have all of the jobs go to the party general secretary and nominal president of the country at the same time. A lot of us, me especially, we're hoping that there'll be some big changes in domestic policy. Foreign policy, we'd like to see some adjustments, improvements, because there have been some rough patches in recent years with China, and China has not been deploying as effective a diplomacy as it has the capacity to do. But domestically, change and reform have been bottled up, both political and economic, since at least 2005. The leadership doesn't seem to be able to form a consensus, and there's a tremendous amount of hope in China and outside China that the new leaders will start to move to direct the economy toward growth on the basis of greater consumption and less investment, and to open up the political system to a greater plurality of voices. No expectation the Communist Party will surrender its rule, but to allow a more relaxed grip on the society as a whole.